I'm honored and blessed, and it's kind of bittersweet, right? Because we have these conversations about, Black women in the workplace, women of color, and, what we need. And then we are in this backdrop, right? This racial backdrop of like, well, now everybody wants to talk about race, but before it was, don't play the race card, so it's this really weird kind of place to be in, and still we're grieving on our own, right? So I do feel like your podcast and other, and books like the Memo, they have definitely helped us continue to have the conversation nationally and globally. And so I'm just glad that I've been able to be one of the voices, in the conversation.
Hello and welcome to the Bold Black Girls Podcast. I'm Aries.
And I am Kim.
Hello.
What's going on? So tell me, nice background back there, by the way.
Oh, thanks. I've been working on getting the house together. No, this is what I wish it looked like. But
well, wishes can come true.
Exactly. That's why I'm manifesting it by putting it out there in the elements.
I love it. I actually do that. And I feel like that actually works.
It's just like how we were doing with our vision boards and stuff.
Yep.
You put a picture up of things that you want and keep it in your heart and your mind. I have a list in my phone. It's called a manifestation list. And I number all these big audacious goals that I have that seem crazy. I got some of them on there. I'm like, I don't need to know how I'm about to do this. I'm just putting it out there. I don't know the how. I ain't even gonna worry about the how because that ain't my business.
It's funny you should say that. Like, I was doing this before I even knew what the word manifestation was,
right?
Or what an actual vision board was. So in Chicago, on the South Side, in the hood,
hey,
right? I bought myself. I had a cork board, and on that cork board, I would just print out things or pictures of things that I wanted. And I love lists. So I would write out a list. And I go back to some of that stuff. A lot of that stuff I was able to accomplish.
I'm telling you, we talked about this. I didn't have multiple lists.
True power. And I mean, I do it now with technology. I don't do it as much as I probably should. But I've done it with my camera roll. So like if I see something, I will create an album of things. Yes, like I'm for real. Like I swear I manifested that cabin trip.
You really did though. No, you really, really did. Because like the timestamps help us see, we talked, and I'm telling you, even just speaking it. I mean, that's why the Bible talks about power of life and death. They're in the power of the tongue or whatever.
Yes.
Just speaking it out. Like it's so many things that I say things sometimes specifically because I'm like, Kim, remind me that I said this. Don't I say that a lot? I'm like, I'm saying this. So that when this happens, we know. Like, I don't even need to tell the world. I'll just be like, I just need a witness.
And you know what? And you don't have to. Right, I love the timestamp, right? And you may not know the when, right?
Mm-hmm.
I even think about Salesforce. I said I want to work at Salesforce.
Yes.
I took that picture of myself at the conference in front of MuleSoft.
See? Boom. You're in there.
So I guess I'm gonna start taking some pictures of some single uncles. I'm just gonna start
single uncles.
Got them
with no kids,
right?
Or grown
and no
kids.
Car seat. And no car seats.
Not no car seats. I'm not doing that. We're not doing car seats.
Well, anyway,
I know we didn't get our track.
You've been this week because I know the last couple of weeks, You've been pretty busy. You've been on a couple panels. You
Yeah.
have really been putting in the work.
Listen, I'm digging ditches, like Pastor Conway said today. He talked about how you gotta create, you gotta plan, you gotta just do, and God will make the increase happen for you and the overflow and all that. So I'm just doing the works to just continue to walk in my purpose, whatever that is. That means doing a panel. Okay, do a panel. Whatever it is. This week, what did I do this week? Look, I gotta go to my calendar. What did I do this week?
And you're really good about the calendar. You actually have
I have to.
inspired me to do that more. I'm better at the activities.
Yeah.
My calendar. I used to be really good, but sometimes you just get lazy.
Well, I have to do it because if it's not in my calendar, it doesn't exist.
It's not golden.
I will forget about it. So that's really the reason my memory is trash when it comes to certain things, specifically dates and times. So one thing I did do that was kind of cool this week was this high school student from McKinney High had reached out to ATW and said, I want to interview Aries Webb-Williams. I'm a high school student, a computer science student, and I want to talk to her about it, mentoring and all this. So we got on the phone, and because I told her, I'm like, well, I'm not in computer science, but you can use me as a resource. Like, I will connect you with some people. So that's when I asked you about the Black UX chick, because she said, I to ask her specifically, what do you think you want to do? Like right now, if you could think of it, I know you're in high school, you probably don't know yet, but is there a certain type of career that sounds interesting to you? Because computer science is basically a math degree.
Right.
That was my first
it really is
major in college. But so I connected her with some folks. She talked about cybersecurity and UX. So I gave her some names. And then I told her about a bunch of groups that she needs to join and start learning about networking now, because that's how you're going to get the internships. That's how you're going to get
I
this and that.
love it.
Yeah, so that was really fun. I enjoyed talking to her. She was super happy because she was like, I didn't know where to look, where to go. I was looking for like women in tech and all that. And she lives out here in McKinney, and it's not that many Black things happening up this way.
I was just going to ask you, is she Black?
Yep, she's Black. So that was really cool. I was like, oh, someone asked about me.
You're a ripple.
Yeah, so that was really cool. So I let her know to hit me up. Let me see, what else did I do this week?
That is awesome. It's the impact.
Yeah, I got my I had a pedicure yesterday.
What? I'm very proud of you, because I know that you have been in the house and you've been doing a really, really, really good job about that. I know I go to like an outdoor boot camp, so I'm gone. I get out at least 4 to 5 times a week, but I know you are pretty much. You don't fill your car up with gas.
I just filled my car up this morning because I went to Target and like the grocery store.
When though?
Girl, I have only filled my tank up, I want to say, since the shutdown, probably 3 times or twice. Seriously. I don't go anywhere outside of, like, everything is within a 5-mile radius.
This is true. So, well, I'm proud of you, because I know you are a former busybody.
Exactly. God had to shut the world down and shut me down.
Yeah, when we first met, we were probably both a little bit busybodies. And a lot of people think that we are extroverts.
I know.
And I have argued with a particular individual that I wasn't. And I met up with her walking literally up the street. We met up at Market Street just to walk the trail. And she was like, I see now that you really aren't an extrovert. I was like, no, I'm absolutely enjoy and love being at home and working from home.
I am my 13-year-old self right now. When I was young, I had friends in the neighborhood. They would come ring the doorbell and all that. And some days I would go, and some days I'd be like, I'm about to read and do something in my room. Like, I just be in my room doing my own thing, drawing, reading. Yep. I was just chilling. Like, I don't need people to get energy. I enjoy people. I enjoy having a good time. I enjoy adventure. I enjoy hanging out with my friends, and stuff. But then I want to go home. Like, I love just chilling out.
And that's why I think me and you,
that's why we get along the way we do.
because we don't need people,
We're very
but
similar.
we enjoy each other. And I'm that type of person. You kind of like this too. Like I might be at an event and you might turn around and I'm gone.
I disappear almost every time. Normally, like especially if it's somewhere where there's drinks and stuff, at a certain point, I'm gone. Like I just, because I'm the person where it's like, I don't like being publicly drinking like a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you start feeling like, okay, I'm feeling like good. Okay, bye. I'm out. Like I disappear. I don't even say bye.
I don't either. I
just be
slide
gone.
out.
They be like, we know she go. My friends already know. Like she go. So yeah. Anywho, what else is up? We got a couple things to talk about today. We got a pretty good episode coming up today.
I think so. We always talk about Black women and,
protect Black women at all costs.
I think this was a very challenging week for Black women with the Breonna Taylor, right?
Girl.
No charges pretty much no charges at all, not pretty much, no charges at all for the officers that killed her. There were charges, but they weren't directly related to her death. And we had an attorney general that looks like us.
I'm gonna tell you what I think about him. Hold on. This is the beginning and the period. Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna play it.
I'm all ears.
Yeah, this is how I feel about Daniel Cameron, just so y'all know specifically.
He mentioned at the press conference, which I thought was quite interesting, that he's a Black man. And as I laid and cried and hurt for Tamika Palmer and for Breonna Taylor and for Kenny Walker and for Janiyah, who we need to love up on. As I laid there and I thought about him saying he's a Black man, I thought about the ships that went into Fort Monroe and Jamestown with our people on them over 400 years ago. And how there were also Black men on those ships that were responsible for bringing our people over here. Daniel Cameron is no different than the sellout Negroes that sold our people into slavery.
She said it.
And white men to capture our people, to abuse them and to traffic them while our women were raped, while our men were raped by savages. That is who you are, Daniel Cameron. You are a coward. You are a sellout. And you were used by the system to harm your own mama, your own Black mama. We have no respect for you. No respect for your Black skin. Because all of our skin folk ain't our kin folk. And you do not belong to Black people at all.
At all, period. So that's how I feel about him. That's how I feel about this situation. It's just one of those things where you're like, and we continue to fight on. We need to continue to fight on. This is actually one of the reasons that it should give us more energy to get out here and vote. We do not have a choice. This is a elected position that he has as an attorney general. He was elected.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
someone voted or someone didn't vote.
Exactly. So what we need to do with this anger and sadness and all that is just mobilize, because the other side, they're mobilizing. They are getting ready to try to get all those Republicans in. And I'm not even on the Republican, Democrat, all that stuff. I don't really care about party and all that. In this matter, I do, because we have a Republican president and I don't want him back in there, period. So we need to get out there and all these elected local and state and all these other positions are also up for grabs. So it ain't just that. And a lot of the reason why, other than a bunch of other stuff, why Hillary lost is because a third of the voters who voted for Obama or voted during that election didn't come out at all. We can't afford that, right? We cannot afford that. Not saying that voting is going to solve all of our race problems, because we just got racist people up in this country, period. So we just need to continue to fight, though, for all these other things that impact what happens when these racists act stupid. So that's that about that. We need to vote, period. Get your family and your cousins. We need to make sure if you have early voting in your state, in your city, you need to get out there and go early. They're going to act up. It's going to be all kind of voter suppression happening on the day of. So be careful. If you can get out there early, get out there early. If you need to mail in a ballot, you don't have transportation, mail a ballot in, but you need to do it early. You need to request that early so that you can send it in and make sure it counts. That's where my energy is right now.
And I am actually, that's where my energy is as well. You know, someone was like, hey, you want to go out and hang out? No, I want to be around so that I'm able to go and vote, right? No, this is not the time to be out here kicking it and possibly exposing yourself to COVID. We need to be able to get to those polls. Yeah, and I'm excited. And we are off where I work. They gave us that day off. But I actually intend to early vote. I'm not waiting.
I'm going to be day one of early voting. I'm out.
I know. I was like, I want to go day one, first thing in the morning. You know, I wake up early anyway. So I'm like, I want to be the first
7
one.
7 a.m. sharp.
Oh, I'm already up. I'm thriving at that time.
Right. I'm like, I will be there with a scarf on my head. No, I'm just playing. I'm like 7 a.m.
At this point, I don't even care how people show up to the polls. Just come.
Get your booty to the polls. Remember that?
Stinky. Oh, you can smell bad. Come.
Did you see the campaign? Get your booty to the polls.
No. Oh yeah.
Y'all go to get your booty to the polls. Is it .org or .com? I don't remember.
I don't know.
The strippers are out here telling y'all to get your booty to the polls as well.
Like, do we need to give you all passes for a free lap dance? What
other demographic do y'all need? We will get everybody to come out and tell you to get out there and vote. Period. I loved it. I love that campaign.
I did too.
Because I was like, what is this? They had a little beat, get your booty to the poll. Hey. I was like, hey, I can't do the moves y'all doing, but but I respect it. Okay, what else we got? How's everything at work going?
You know what? Everything at work is actually going pretty good. I am trying to now, or not trying, I'm starting to engage myself in our ERGs.
Nice.
And so we actually call them equality groups.
Okay.
And I like that. So I have decided to be part of like the leadership team because I want to see change. And
again, we are in alignment as usual.
Right. And so I actually met with the president like last week, put some time on his calendar. I was like, I don't know if you remember me, but we've met before prior to me joining Salesforce, and I'm here. Mm-hmm. And so he was like, oh, good. Would you like to be part of our equality leadership team? And although I was hesitant because that's a fine line, I'm new, so I'm still learning. And I am always cognizant of my time and the value and the pay. I'm going to do things that are passionate to me, but at the same time, I can remember being a part of an ERG and not realizing what I was signing up for in terms of hours.
Effort.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, so in addition to my job, this is added work that I'm not necessarily being compensated for. So I better enjoy what I do. But more to come in that discussion later on in this podcast that you have brought to my attention. I was like, you know what?
Look, when I did that event last month,
about 2 weeks ago.
Where are we? 2 weeks ago. Specifically, a lot of the questions came from an article that Minda Harts co-wrote with some other ladies, talking about pay. You know, with as it pertains to ERG and what kind of incentives are you providing, you know? And that helped me ask some really targeted questions to those 8 ladies who are HR VPs and chief diversity officers and things like that. Cause I just was curious, like in real life, like are companies doing this? Because I think it's at 30% are not, or something like that. So yeah, I mean, it's something to think about. And I think especially in this climate, like we got to be careful with that because again, same thing here. I think my company, we're formulating a brand new diversity group and we're working on some things. And That's also, something in my thoughts, but I also am considering those other things too, because now our lives are so much more complicated. Obviously, we're both passionate about the subject.
Right.
And yes, I want to be there to help encourage change and be a voice that can represent the voiceless. And but at the same time,
I don't want to be used.
exactly. So, I don't know. And we'll talk to our wonderful Bo Black Girl of the Month this month about that. I mean, obviously, if you're watching this, you already see in the title who it is. But yeah, so we're gonna talk to Minda later about that.
And I think, like you said, we're both in alignment of where we're kind of going. And when you are where we are, which I like to say that I'm in my second trimester of my professional career.
Mm-hmm.
And we can talk about that as well. But as you grow and you learn, you know where to use your time, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's going to add value to you? Like, okay, I'm not being compensated, but how will this add value to me? And, or I always think, how can I leave it better for the people that are coming behind me?
Yes, because we were talking about this before, and you mentioned the trimesters, and I was like, wait, what trimester? That sounds like I wasn't getting the math. But I guess if we're thinking you start working when you graduate from college, right? Let's just say you started at 21, right? Because I was younger, but I had to work while in college, so that's when I was working. So let's just say 21, okay? And when you first start as an entry level person, you're just trying to gain skills. So you are going to be doing some work that probably you're not being compensated for, because you're going to get the skills. You're out there I'm going to go over here and help. I'm going to go over there. I'm going to do these different jobs or these different things that may be lateral moves, but I'm learning about the business. I'm learning about just different things so that I can I'll be able to add value. Yeah, I'll be able to add value later because I have these different skill sets that maybe others don't have. And I definitely think that where we're at in this second trimester is you have the skill set and you've gained a lot of knowledge over time. Now it's kind of like you're correcting some of those things that you may have done in those younger years where you're like, yeah, that was cool, but no, like we're not doing that anymore.
That's not acceptable in this second trimester.
Yeah, that's not where we're at today. We're in a different space. And so, yeah, I agree with you on that. I feel like I'm in a place now where it's like, okay, we need to be making sure we're on target for a specific track and knowing where is this going? Where am I really going, here? And what are the opportunities, and making sure that every move you're making is going to be on that track. If it's not within this road, we don't need to be. I can't. We got too much going on. I didn't have kids and stuff in that first trimester. I had LJ at 30. You had Kiera, but you was a boss.
I was still green.
Yeah, I was about to say you was green. And and so the greenness, I was able to, fail and, do all that. I ain't got time for failure. No, just playing. I'm still failing. I still have things I can fail at, but it's not as detrimental. It's more detrimental now than it would have been then because I'm young. I can, get back up and go find you a quick, entry level job somewhere if you had to. Now I'm like, we got to make sure these moves is going in the right direction.
Too, like your second trimester, you're like, okay, I'm interviewing the companies as opposed to their first trimester. It was probably more so about, okay, who's going to hire me?
Make sure they think I'm good enough.
Yep. And prove yourself. Are you good enough for me as well? Do your values align to what my values are? Because I don't want to have any problems in the second trimester. Because we will abort quickly.
And that's the thing about being a rebel. Like, I say that it's more detrimental, but at the same time, I'm willing to risk it. Like, if it's not conducive to my well-being, I will leave. I'll figure it out later. Like, that's just kind of my personality. I'll be like, we not tolerating no foolishness now. Because I'll be gone.
I believe now, though, we are more empowered and emboldened. So, like, for instance, Kiara's in her first trimester.
Yes, poor baby.
No.
She's already dealt with it.
Friday was her last day, and I wanted to teach her a cheat code, right? That was a cheat code. And to develop that muscle that you are talking about, because I believe our generation didn't have that muscle because we were told, girl, that's a good job. You better stay
Hold on to that. Yeah.
Now it's like, no. If that's messing with what your future goals are, your mental well-being, your emotional well-being, then it's probably time for you to go somewhere else.
And you don't have to, she didn't have to stay there, you know? And that's the thing. Because I told her, I'm like, girl, it's a trip, because she works the same job that I was working at that age. Exactly the same job, the same one. And that was one of those jobs that I had when I would pull up in the parking lot. I was having a headache every time I pulled in the parking lot at work. That's when you know your body is reacting.
And nobody was coaching you through that. You didn't have anybody to coach you through that. And even this weekend when we went to work out, Aisha, she told me she worked there too. She said, I had to quit after a year and a half. She was like, it was so bad.
It was and that's the thing. I was thinking, is it me? Is it like, that's when how the imposter syndrome starts developing, when you allow yourself to stay too long. And I think now, like with you and I, we both transitioned this year into new roles. And it's like we were able to interview them and make sure it was the right place for us. Like, I honestly feel like it was one of the best choices I made in companies ever, as far as how it went down, how, just being really confident in who I am. I didn't necessarily need to have the job right then and there. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't desperate to be like, well, I'll just take whatever, anything. And it's all about where you position yourself and really realizing, like, hey, I add value. I have something to bring to the table. And then I want to make sure that I'm in a safe place, because I had been in a toxic work environment before that. So I was already kind of like on edge, like, what y'all got going on over here? But so far I feel like it's been proven that it's, a good place. So,
Same.
Same.
And I think too, we took the time to also, like you said, interview, but research. Yeah. Like, I wasn't applying to a company where I saw bad reviews.
Right.
On, what's that website?
Glassdoor.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Where you saw bad reviews. I mean, so yeah.
Just making sure that you are, do your due diligence. It's kind of like what Jacqueline was saying that week when we had her on, talking about looking at the details and, doing all those things, because it's going to affect you one way or the other. You're saying, I don't care, I just need to get some money. Okay, you're saying that now, and then you're going to be having headaches and night sweats and all this junk, trying to go to work every day, struggling and stressing, and that check does not fix it.
It does not.
I know people who don't have no money be like, well, let me find out, because you just want to get some money. But in real life, that's why you see people who are billionaires and rich jumping off of bridges places. They can't handle their situation sometimes, so we just want to make sure we are in a good, healthy mental space, because obviously we see what's going on in the world. We don't need to be putting ourselves in something that is not going to add value to us as well.
And more toxicity.
Yeah, we work a lot of hours at these places, and that's a lot of chunk out of your life to be miserable.
Agreed.
It don't have to be that way, and people are hiring, so y'all keep looking. Places are hiring out here. But yeah, okay. So today we do have a bold Black girl of the month, who is at this point, y'all should know who she is through us too, because we talk about her, we bring her up a lot. She was our first guest on the podcast. Live podcast. She's just doing great things since then. I mean, when we got with her, the book wasn't even out yet. And then it had just came out when we had her. So we got to be a part of like that first 10-city tour, or whatever it was. We bootlegged our way in her book tour. Like, hey, you gonna be in Texas? Come up here. Kind of thing. So I'm super excited to have her. I'm going to give y'all a little bit of her accolades for those who don't know. Her name is Minda Harts. She is the CEO of the Memo LLC, a career development platform that helps women of color advance in the workplace since 2015. Before the Memo, she had a 15-year career in fundraising. Last year, she became a best-selling author for her debut book, The Memo, What Women of Color Need to Know to Secure Their Seat at the Table. Make sure you go get that if you do not have it. She's working on 2 new books already. She just announced one actually today. And so the next one actually comes out next year. It's called Pack Light. I love that one. It has more to do with, I think, the mental health aspect of all these things that happen to us in the workplace. And then the other one is called You're More Than, hold on, what is it called? You Are More Than Magic, The Memo for young readers, a young adult version of the author's The Memo. And it's a guide for girls of color looking to find their voices and claim space as they prepare for school, college, and their careers. That's going to be amazing. So that comes out in 2022. So this girl, she getting the deals
I love it.
Yes. So I'm loving that. Okay, what else? I didn't went all the way off.
I wish I had this when I was in my first trimester.
Oh my God, me too. Because I would have really been crazy then. Because I'd be like having all this empowerment and all this knowledge and stuff. They would. I don't know what would happen to me. She adds thought leadership as a career advice columnist for the media platform Well and Good. She also is the host of a podcast called Secure the Seat. She loves grits and rap lyrics. If you go listen to her podcast, you'll know that. She also serves as an adjunct assistant professor at NYU Wagner. She's been featured on NBC's Morning Joe, Fast Company, Time Magazine, Wall Street Journal. She's been at all the companies this year. Like since the book launch, it's like she was doing a couple things here and there, and then all of a sudden, all these companies, Amazon, Google, Facebook, LinkedIn, Best Buy, Salesforce, all these places. I mean, I can't even list all of them because it's just everything you could think of. That's where she's been. Time Magazine. I mean, all kind of stuff. So I'm super excited to have her and have her as our Bold Black Girl of the Month of September, being that this time last year, she was our first guest. So
it's our anniversary.
It's our anniversary.
Yes, anniversary.
Exactly. All right. So the next time you see us, we will have Minda with us. And let's bring her on.
Yes.
All right. Welcome, Minda, to the Bold Black Girls podcast.
A year later.
Hey. Yes. My favorite Bold Black Girls. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. And I'm loving the shirt.
I had to represent coming here. I had to rep.
And today, because you were on, I wore a shirt that says "Empowered Women Empower Women." You can't see it, but
yeah,
we were on the same wavelength.
Look, I got my Erykah Badu, Jill Scott Versus shirt on, so same thing.
For the culture.
Same thing. I could have had a Gladys Knight, Patti LaBelle shirt. It would have been the same thing as well. You know, empower women, empowering women.
This is true.
We've been dropping nuggets all podcasts about you coming on, and we're just super excited. Like, I feel like every time Minda posts something, we're always like, yes.
What Minda posted.
Yes.
Read the article.
Yes, exactly. And so catch us up. So we met Minda just to catch other people up, and they can go back to episode 11 and see our first and only live event, because we were planning on doing more, and then the world shut down. So Minda, I hit her up on Twitter one day, early 2019, just based on conversation that you were having, and you were talking about this book that you were having come out. The book was not out yet. I had no idea really what you get these books and you're like, I have a book coming out, pre-order, what it's going to be about, but we hadn't read it or anything yet, but just knew that we needed to collaborate with you on the topic based on what we were dealing with and what we wanted to put out, want our podcast to represent. So when we put this podcast out, it was August or like the very end of July last year, we had our first episode. And then after some back and forth on Twitter with Minda, we we tried to bootleg her up to Dallas after she was doing her 10-city tour. I think that probably was your last engagement that you were supposed to be scheduled for the Memo tour. And then you came up to Dallas from Houston and hung out with us. And then your world blew up from there. I don't think you stopped really. I think you planned to stop, and then you've been everywhere since. So how has your year been since the book came out?
Wow. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you both for, believing in me before you even met me. So, and so I can't thank you enough for really not just saying that, empower women, but you all really use your platform to amplify Black women's voices. And so I'm forever grateful for that. And you both hold a very special place in my heart. But it has been much a whirlwind. Like literally, I thought I was going on a 10-city book tour for this book that I wasn't sure if anybody other than my mom would be reading, and then I literally have been nonstop since I've seen you all, even, in quarantine. And I'm honored and blessed. And it's kind of bittersweet, right? Because we have these conversations about, Black women in the workplace, women of color, and, what we need. And then we are in this backdrop, right? This racial backdrop of like, well, now everybody wants to talk about race, but before it was, don't play the race card, so it's this really weird kind of place to be in. And still we're grieving on our own, right? So I do feel like your podcast and other, and books like the Memo, they have definitely helped us continue to have the conversation nationally and globally. And so I'm just glad that I've been able to be one of the voices, in the conversation.
Absolutely.
So many people have been reading this book, it's just like, it's a part of the culture now. Like the Memo is a part of the culture.
I was going to say that I really think your book was divinely released at the right time. I think God knew that we were going to come up on this and we would need something that companies would need to refer to. And even just like when you did that live podcast at the time, my daughter was actually in the room, and about a year and a half ago, she actually had started a job. Well, this past Friday, she quit that job. And I attribute that to her being in the room listening to what other Black women were going through. So you have already made impact to a generation, right behind you, so that they know that they don't have to go through what we went through and just stay at a job just because there are other opportunities. So I want to personally thank you. And I'm glad you were able to come because I see the impact, not just with myself, but with my daughter.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'm glad that she has her voice, right? And she's using it in that way early on. I wish I would have had the same kind of sense
I said the same thing, Minda, because literally I worked the same job. I worked at the same company and everything back at the same age as her. And I told her, I'm like, girl, well, I ended up doing the same thing, but but it wasn't because of necessarily the empowerment and knowing, it was just kind of like, I can't do this no more. I had to just go find something else. But it was more like she had more of a support team of people who could say, no, this is what should be happening. This is how you use your voice, so that was definitely, I know she's going to appreciate that. And she's already walking into life just in a better place than all of us. So,
which is good. Each generation should get better. And I know you have some future books coming up, so we'll talk more about that and get into that.
Yeah. I feel like, you've been, as we said, you went around, you've been talking to people about this book. And I feel like usually we'll say something like, what advice would you give your younger self? But I feel like the Memo is literally that. But I want to know more about like these companies that you've been visiting and the stories now that you've got a lot more women's stories and a lot more women connecting with you and telling you how the book has resonated with them. Like what new things have you discovered this year? Because I know, like you said, you're working on some more books, but what have you learned in this year of just talking to more women and having really like a broader population of people to hear from?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And unfortunately, I'm hearing similar issues even in quarantine, right? Like before we would go to our jobs and be like, man, they're tripping. I just got to get home so I can have some peace of mind. Now we're on our couch. Now we're on our bed getting microaggressed while our kids or dogs are running around. Like, we have no peace, right? And so that's what I'm hearing. Like, Tom has microaggressed me in the Zoom call or on the, whatever. And so I think that I'm hearing that. And then also, the dominant majority, they had their go-to people in the office, right? So now in virtual environment, many of them are not thinking about us, right? So it's again, like, and then the humanity piece, right? And I know we'll probably get into it, but the thing of like, okay, so the Breonna Taylor situation happened, like, don't talk to me today, right? Can we wait? I mean, yes, talk to me, but don't talk to me about some real heavy stuff, until like next week, like those sorts of things. So I think we're really, really feeling it even more so because we're in like a multiple pandemic situation, right? Political, racial, health. And so I think that Black women I'm hearing more like, thank you for the book because I'm struggling inside of what's going on, right? So us having just a place where people can still find some peace, right, in the midst of craziness.
Yeah, you posted something saying like managers, what did you say? It was something like your
black
employees, like, leave them alone today or don't bother them today or something like that. Because really it's a trip. And I found myself, I'm so used to covering it up, like that I have to kind of give myself a chance to kind of grieve because I'm used to just acting like everything is normal when I'm at work, to where when the George Floyd thing happened, I definitely was at the breaking point. I couldn't cover it up anymore. So it definitely started a conversation at the job, which was great. I mean, I think it was needed. But then when Breonna, it was kind of like, I just was like, let's just keep acting like everything is whatever, And then one of my coworkers, like, acknowledged to me, like, I just want to say, like, I know it's been a bad day or whatever. And I'm like, oh yeah, it has been a bad day. Like, not that I forgot that it was a bad day, but I had tried to compartmentalize it. So I definitely think being able to express it and tap into our feelings like we should is something that we even have to practice, ourselves, to give ourselves time to actually think through what we're feeling. So
I agree. And one of the things that they did at Salesforce, and it was actually hosted by our ERG, is they brought in a professional therapist for their Black employees. And I want to say over 2 to 4 weeks, we had access to have group therapy for their Black employees. And I think that was really good. And I was like, okay, wow, that's actually an investment that they made where they had to hire someone to come in. And I've always said that companies should probably have an on-site therapist, especially once you experience microaggression. You might need to book a 15-minute session to say, hey, am I crazy? Help me through this. Or we might need to get them some help because there might be the reason why I might need therapy.
So true.
Yeah, I agree because I'm writing, one of the next books about healing through racial trauma in the workplace. And that I literally just finished a chapter like, get some on-site therapists, right, in the building, or like group life coaches. Like, this needs to be part of like the suite. I don't care about some sparkling water or none of that. Get a therapist, get some resources.
Schools have counselors. I'm like, why we can't have them? We need some counselors.
Well, that's not a bad idea, which kind of brings us to our next topic. So you recently released the paperback version of the Memo, but it has 2 extra chapters?
Yes.
Okay. So
what are the extra chapters?
Yes.
Well, one chapter is like kind of a recap of what's happened in the last year of the Memo and how some people don't know the story, about how I got turned down, many times before the Memo actually made it to the shelves. And I was told that, there's no audience for this book. It would never do well, those sorts of things. And so talking about
you
that.
Thought your mama was the only one that was going to read? Oop, they were wrong.
Yep. They were wrong. And so I talk about that. And then just like the movement around the conversation, right? Like people talking about it with their sister friends, now with their managers, and just the organic swell of that. And then also I have another, like, I guess it's a chapter, but it's more resource related, but I call it scripts. because there's been so many questions that people have asked me over the past year. And like, what do I do when someone touches my hair? What do I do when, somebody speaking over me in a meeting, and sometimes we don't have that language to articulate what's happening. We're too like stunned in the moment. And so I took some of like the top questions that I would get from emails or, things like that, social media, and I put them in the book and answered those questions, how I would offer advice for that.
I love that.
I do too. I think I'm going to gift that for a graduate or even my daughter for the upcoming holidays, because I know she was put in a situation where it was kind of like what you described an example, like you didn't know how to respond or react because you were just so taken back. And I'm over here trying to coach her, like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you say that?
Kim was ready to roll up there. She's like, I'm going to come. I'm like, no, we need to let her do. She has to go through this herself. We can't have her mama coming up to the job. Like, get off my baby.
That's next time. If she can't, if she can't do it on her own, then mama got to come and take care.
I was ready, and now I feel like they owe me some therapy on their dime for having to deal with it.
Hey.
So tell us, Minda, about you had a new announcement on LinkedIn about some new upcoming projects and some books that you're working on. I don't know that you want to tell us everything, but would you like to share and highlight what's going on?
I love the titles, though. Let's talk through those.
Yes. So one book is that'll be out next fall, called Pack Light. And that's about how we navigate racial trauma and how you heal, right? So healing can be a process. And sometimes, to Ari's point earlier, we've learned to just shut ourselves off, right? Oh yeah, that hurts, but I'm not supposed to feel that here, right? And how you deal with that. And then also for us who may have left a toxic environment, what about us who are still in them and we aren't leaving anytime soon because of whatever issues, right? Maybe this is what we need, to get us that new house or whatever the reasons why we stay sometimes. But how do you still heal through that trauma, right? For us to be able to pack light and be right within, we carry so much racial trauma and baggage, us, for example, that's 10 to 15 years plus racial trauma that we will carry. And it affects our health, I believe, as Black women, the older that we get. And so that's one book. And then the other book is You Are More Than Magic. And that's the Memo adapted for young girls of color.
I love it.
I do too. I wish I would have had something at that age, kind of going into corporate America, because I know we talked about this at the podcast. Like, I didn't have any guidance. My mother
didn't.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that it gets better for the next generation and how they navigate life.
I think that now that we're talking about it and we're having these dialogues, they are definitely getting more, even with just in this last year. Think about it, when we were starting the podcast and when I was reaching out to you, like, this was like a conversation that we were having one-on-one with our friends or,
right.
Like your immediate circle, but you weren't just really having these group conversations about what's really going on. And realizing like, whoa, when we were talking about it last year in April in public, people were like, well, it was still that kind of hush or criticism about what we said, even though it's true. Like, people were uncomfortable. So then when we had you, it was like, okay, we still weren't all the way there. You know what I mean? So now, like Kim was saying earlier, we're dialoguing about it now. I mean, obviously this year was some unprecedented stuff where companies are literally saying Black Lives Matter. I'm like, what? There's people saying it that I thought would never open their mouth to say Black Lives Matter. So I definitely think you are contributing to the, all of the repertoire of all the things that we're going to need, to really, to improve this situation. And not just to us, to the people who need to improve, right? Like, they're the ones that need to fix this, not necessarily us, but we still do need to know how to navigate in these. So I'm loving this, and I can't wait to give these books away to some folks.
Exactly. And now you have ERGs are reading it as part of their book clubs.
Yes.
They've suggested Karens should read these to know what we're kind of experiencing. So I think it's very pivotal.
So speaking of the ERGs, that was a perfect segue, Kim, into what I was So I did this panel last week. We're talking about leveraging ERGs for innovation and all these different things, and to make sure that we are how companies can really utilize, how they're utilizing their ERGs, and how should they be utilizing their ERGs because of those being these type of safe, I would call them corporate grassroots, groups that have the voices of the people that are affected, or, that are a part of those groups in there and helping with recruitment. They're doing so much work, really for the companies. And you mentioned something about, this is the article you did with Fast Company. And you mentioned about like budgeting, because it was basically like, we already working for free, like, pay these people, pay the leaders, of ERGs, or do something that benefits them. Like what can you elaborate a little bit more on kind of where you guys were coming from there? And what have you seen as you've gone around? Like, have you seen some companies that are positively, like, doing this in a positive way that people can replicate?
Yeah, you know me by now. You guys know that I like to shake the table a little bit, shake the room, and for me, I have a lot of ERGs that reach out to me and they'll say, can you come and speak? But we don't have a budget to pay you, and then I'm like, so then you get into, and then they'll tell me that they're doing this volunteer and, all these sorts of things. And I mean, for almost a year straight, I was getting this, or we only have like $500, or I'm like, well, can you buy some books? We can't even do that. This is to last us through the whole year, all of these sorts of things. And I was just like, wow, this is interesting. And it really got me thinking. I'm like, okay, well, women of color are underpaid, period, in the wage gap. And now you're asking my sisters to do all of this extra, somewhat household work, right? And not even have the leverage, not even have an executive sponsor who's invested in the success of this ERG. And, and I'm not saying every ERG doesn't do that, but I think when you don't have a budget, for example, you would never ask the marketing department to go and do a Super Bowl ad and say, you know what? There's no budget for you to do that ad, right? So how can you ask the ERGs to scale diversity with no budget, right? And also the people who are looking for opportunities to lead, right? They're leading, hoping that they would be accelerated up the ladder or have some access that they didn't have before. And so I think it's really important that it's not just nice to have, it has to be part of the business case, right? Are we, what are we doing to make sure that they're successful, just like the marketing team is successful, et cetera? And so for me, I was even hearing that from some of my co-authors on that piece. They were going into women's ERGs, not necessarily Black ERGs per se like me, and they were hearing some of the same things. And so we're like, let's talk about this on a larger scale and really hold leadership accountable, not just for the pizza parties, but what are you actually doing that benefits the employees that are taking their time, right, and their talents. And I think that ERGs are important if you're going to invest in them in the right way.
Yeah, because I mean, these are billion-dollar companies, like you have some money, like you have money, and it really says a lot about what you feel, what your priorities are. These ERGs are really your place to connect even within the community. They're usually the ones that are right there bridging that gap, with other organizations and events and different things like that. And then also the speakers, like being able to, so we also going to have a wage gap issue where Minda not getting a check. Like, we didn't get a check. So yeah, definitely. I think that was a great article. I mean, it opened my eyes to even a couple things that I didn't even think about, even just our performance reviews, and that being a part of your leadership or some kind of competency that you're getting evaluated on, for bonuses and things like that.
I agree, because I actually sat on our ERG at my previous company. And when I read that article, I'm like, wow, I didn't even really think about that. Like the amount of time that we put into putting together events, recruiting people. And there were a lot of times when they would leverage our ERG for retention, or even to, help go out and attract new talent. And the other part is, you all publicize, oh, we are made in the top 20 Diversity Inc. Well, yeah, I help you get there as part of the ERG. So yeah, I should have been compensated for that because I helped you reach that goal.
Exactly. Or at least like give me a shout out, right? Give me a plaque, something, give me something.
Or a annual bonus at the end of the year.
Right.
Like, okay, you served on the board. This is a bonus.
Mhm.
And I was feeling some type of way after reading that article. And so now
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, now I have to navigate different in, future endeavors of joining different ERGs.
Yeah. We have to center ourselves because it's like a catch-22. Like we take these opportunities because it gives us what we think it gives us, the visibility, right? Which it should. That's how it's supposed to function. But typically, I'd like someone who, actually go and do the work and see how often have someone from an ERG been accelerated into the leadership, been accelerated into the C-suite, because it's a talent pool that I think goes untapped.
I do. I absolutely do too. And it goes back to also, it's like, who's sponsoring you? I know it was a point in one of our ERGs where I didn't see sponsorship. And I told the president, I said, I'm not coming. I said, what's the value in it for me if I'm not getting exposure to other leaders who aren't committed to coming?
Exactly.
Yeah. So as you've moved from, more of the traditional workspace into now you are literally touring the world, even via virtually.
Right from this seat, right here.
Right. You secured your seat at home.
You sure did.
and you secured your seat in this space. So I want to ask a little bit more of a personal question about kind of what you feel like, what have you needed over this year of as you've been transitioning into all this, and now you are actually tapping into these wounds a lot more frequently by talking about your story and just meeting these other women and hearing their stories and bringing that in, internally and all that. What have you needed as far as your support system, your just different things that kind of sustain you during this time? What kind of help, like even if it's assistant or something like that, like what have you needed this year, like just to support you in all this stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, I realized that self-preservation was like the biggest lesson for me because up until actually COVID, I was doing everything on my own, like booking and all of the things, right? Marketing, like everything. And like you said, there's the business, but then there's the emotional part of doing this type of work, and also the physical part, because I was on the road for almost a year straight. And so I didn't realize how much I had worn myself down, right? And it's hard as we've all heard before to fill somebody else's cup when you haven't recharged. And so for me, I realized that I had to invest in myself, like I talked about in the book. And that first thing that I did was get an assistant, right? Leo is her name. And I call she has taken so much off my plate that I can actually think. I often say, man, I'm so glad she's the best investment I've ever made, because I think I'd be like in a corner, like shaking somewhere, just not being able to handle it all. And so that part of knowing that you, at some point you do have to delegate, right? That's just life.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part of it was the health aspect, right? Is understanding that I'm getting older and I have to take care of my body if I want to be able to run this marathon, right? So also making sure that I'm working out at least like 3 to 4 times a week. And so that's been part of and I'm able to do that even more so now being at home. And so I just realized that this is a marathon, right? There's no sprinting in equity work, right? And so I want to be here, to see things through and to celebrate all of our wins. And so I realized that the self-preservation part is important. Like, we're not going to solve these problems in a Zoom call. We're not going to solve these problems, in a week. And so giving myself the space and grace to say, okay, Minda, it's okay to lay down. It's okay to rest, and I think really owning that and honoring my body and listening to it.
Because last year you didn't have a plan. You didn't have a plan last year. She was like, I know I need to do this. And I'm like, okay.
No, I was not prepared for what was to come, and so I think it goes back to what we talked about even a year ago is I wasn't dreaming big enough, right? I just thought I need to get this book out. I need to help as many, women that look like us, but you don't to your point, Kim, I think God orchestrated all of this, right? And I just didn't know. I didn't see behind the scenes of what he saw. And I'm honored to be, one of the foot soldiers as a part of it, so it's good.
Yes. And rest, you definitely need rest. I tell Aries that all the time. I'm a member of the nap ministry, and I believe we did a podcast on joy is resistance, but also rest is too. And I think sometimes as Black women, goes back to what you said, we take on so much. And like you said, with your health, we have to take care of ourselves. We cannot pour from an empty cup. So I'm all about self-preservation as well.
Definitely.
Yes.
Well,
it's hard, but it's hard.
As we are kind of coming to an end of our time, I'm so appreciative again for you to come and join us. Is there any, we typically will do like a call to action at the end of every episode. And our first one already we talked about earlier was vote, vote, vote. Just make sure you get out there and vote for these local elections specifically, as well as obviously the presidential election. But what could you give us as a call to action that comes to your mind, or something that you typically tell people as you're kind of what we need or something we need to do out here? Anything that you can think of.
So there's this new quote that I've really been like marinating on, and I wrote it on a sticky note on my computer to remind me. And the author is Cherie Morenga. She's a Chicana activist, and she says, "To assess the damage is a dangerous act, but to stop there is even more dangerous." And so I know that right now we're assessing things, we're trying to figure things out, right? But we can't stop there. Like, what needs to happen is gonna be because we're making it happen, right? So we've assessed that, yes, there's inequalities in the workplace, and now we can't stop there. We have to activate our voices, because we always have had our voices. We just have to decide how we want to use them. And then to our point, we are doing this not just for us, but for the next generation to come. And so we can't just assess, we got to act. And so reminding ourselves that we are, it's such an important time right now, right? Like, we have so much at stake, and not in a scary way, but in a very joyous way. Like, our ancestors that came ahead of us, they left us the tools to be able to activate our courage right now. And so I'm so excited and optimistic about the place that Black women will finally hold our rightful seat with our crowns. I feel like it's coming, and so let's not just assess, let's keep going, because we're headed to the promised land. I do believe that.
I agree. I'm definitely optimistic. Head over to MindaHarts.com, and your website is bomb. I was like, I love her new website.
Yes.
It's super cute. MindaHarts.com. You can find everything that you need to know about Minda there. And then after you go to her website, come on over to BoldBlackGirls.com and check us out. Subscribe for our newsletter. And Minda, again, thank you for joining the Bold Black Girls.
Yes, and purchase the book.
Purchase all the books. Just go on and get them all, whatever's on pre-order.
I'm getting the paperback. I'm going to order the paperback. I want to read the extra 2 chapters.
And the audio is on Audible. Get the paperback. And if you can get it from a Black bookstore, Black-owned bookstore, that would be even more amazing. But if not, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Audible, all those places where you find books, you can find it. All right, y'all. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Minda.
Have a bold week.